So for tonight's speaker session, we are going to get updates from President Bernie Wiehle, and then we'll hear from Tech Transfer, OBA Tech Transfer's Kelsey Ducharme, who will discuss what to do with your debt outs, how to look through them and analyze them, the biosecurity risks involved with having some debt outs, which is unfortunately what we're dealing with this year.
Welcome everybody, and thank you very much for coming out. So first off, I just want to say thank you to everyone who filled out the survey. We'll go through some of the survey results as we go along. Your input is appreciated, and it's very helpful for us early on this season. We knew early on that we were going to have potentially very high losses, so getting a survey to us was good, so when we could get into our talks with OMAFRA early. There's also the research statistics, but really the important part was to get an early handle on what was going on out in the bee yards in Ontario this year. So again, thank you for filling out the surveys. From our commercial, we had 77 respondents from our commercial part of the industry, so average of 44.2%. Small scale beekeepers, that's 53, and an average across Ontario of 52%. Again, this is not the first time that we've had high losses in Ontario, but I think the difference here this year is that it's so widespread across the province. Every region is reporting high losses. It's early as well. Every day that goes by, we might be losing more bees, and we're trying to get a good handle on it. So a 52% loss is 53,000 colonies in Ontario's lost. This next slide shows that we've had losses in years before. Now I know we've used words like unprecedented and things like that, but I'd say it's very severe. And the difference here with these slides is that this is a preliminary early number. Every day that goes by and we have goofy weather like we're having, like it snowed again this morning here, and it's been cold and backwards all this week and last week. We've only had like really one good day or two good days of beekeeping this year. So every day that goes by, these numbers could creep up. The previous year's numbers are all years that OMAFRA did in a full-scale study later on in the season. So a 52% loss reporting at this time of the year is very, very high. One of the main differences this year, if you can read through the next slide there, is that it is very, very difficult to make up these losses with supply chain issues. And the fact that these losses are across Canada, nukes and packaged bees are very, very hard to come by. We originally thought queens were going to be very difficult. It looks like queens might not be a problem, but they're also very, very expensive. Price of packages and queens have gone up astronomically if you can get them. And with this backwards weather, as we lose more and more bees, and for those of you who had a chance to go out to your yards to take a look at them, we see very, very weak colonies. I had a chance to get through mine. My losses weren't this high, but I'm going to be struggling very hard to make up replacements if I had to in the next couple of weeks. There are just not that many bees in the hive, very little brood and very little feed in there. So this might make it very hard to make up our losses. So the next slide is how losses by region. And as you can see, this is almost across the entire province. Niagara and Northwestern Ontario have the highest, but it's basically the same across the province. Only the northern areas have slightly lower losses. And I think the big thing there in the Niagara region and probably central Ontario is that this is where the vast majority of bees are held over winter. We've asked beekeepers how their bees are doing. We have a good percentage of beekeepers saying that they're very much the same. We have a high percentage saying they're worse or much worse, and a very low number of respondents saying they're better or much better. And that's mostly with the small commercial or smaller beekeepers. Commercial beekeepers are reporting that they have some serious problems going on. We've asked the respondents what they think are the reasons for the loss. And this isn't a very scientific question. It's just an impression from that beekeeper as to what they think is the problem. And getting to the bottom of why these losses is going to be a little bit more work. As you can see, bees were going into the winter very small and weak. We've had some areas had fluctuations in the winter. In my area here, the winter wasn't what I would call bad, but we've had some variations across the province. Cold and wet is bad for the bees. We think the main reason here now is we had a increase in mite loads late in the season last year. And that goes back to the spring, where we had an early spring, which led to an earlier buildup of mites. We had queen problems, and I can speak from experience on queen problems. I had one yard where I have over 50% loss, and that yard gave me problems with queens all season long. They were imported queens, and they didn't travel well from where they came from. We have starvation, and part of that is due to the weather. Last summer we had wet weather, cold weather, and then kind of a crappy fall in some areas where they just didn't build up the stores. And of course we have pesticides in some areas where we're still trying to get a handle as to why we're having some losses and linking that to certain pesticides. Again, more research needs to be done on that issue. We still have small hive beetle as being a reported problem. We're thinking that small hive beetle, an increase in small hive beetle is a symptom of the problem, which usually means weak queens, weak hives, but that's being reported as well. Again, most of the commercial beekeepers are looking to split their existing hives or buying nukes and packages. The big problem with splitting existing hives is if you don't have any hives to split, you can't do that. And buying nukes and packages has become very, very expensive. Some beekeepers hope to use cap funding for replacements. Very, very few beekeepers are in the AgriCorps insurance program. We have very low intake on that. And then those beekeepers that had no losses or keep going with what they have. So what's the impact of these losses? Somewhere between 30 and 35,000 Ontario hives are out for pollination in various fruits, apples, apricots, blueberries, squash, canola, and honeybees contributing over almost $300 million worth of pollination for crops grown in this province. If we lose, well, the figure is 30%. If we lose 30% or more, it is hard to recover that first year. So we may be short bees. Right now we're thinking, especially for blueberries, some of the commercial guys east, we might be 20 to 25% short of the number of pollination hives required for out there. And we're not sure for Ontario if we can get enough colonies for the fruit pollination in those areas that have apples and other fruits. Again, we have very low intake into the insurance programs, and which is a problem because one of the things we're looking at is improving that insurance program. But there are a number of people who are very, very discouraged and talking about exiting beekeeping. And then following that, of course, is if beekeepers are splitting their colonies, at a certain point, you will not get much of a honey crop this year. And again, if we don't have good weather this summer, we never know what our honey production is. We've been working very, very hard to build up a demand for Ontario honey. We think it's the best in Ontario and the best in the world. And if we're not producing, that gap might be filled by imported honey, and that's what we don't want. Our concerns, again, is affordable comprehensive honey production, queen and nucleus insurance programs. We're working with the province to improve these programs. We don't have a good ability to research the reasons for these large-scale colony collapses and losses. We need to do more research for various number of reasons. Our ability to research these losses has been hindered. And then following that, getting large scale and early in-season sources of queens, nukes, and packages is very difficult here in Ontario. We've been relying on imported packages, mostly from Australia and other countries, but with the supply chain issues that are going on in that, it just makes it very, very hard to get packages and queens brought in early. And again, even if you're bringing in queens early, if you don't have a viable colony, you can't split it to make another one. And we also have barriers in interprovincial trade in bees. I think right now that might be a non-issue because all the other provinces are having problems as well. Still haven't heard from the east how theirs are doing, but they're generally a net importer of bees anyway. But the west is struggling, and Quebec as well. So we have a very difficult time rebuilding Ontario's bee population in a short period of time if we have a collapse event like we are having now. I shouldn't use the word colony collapse, but losses as we are here in Ontario. What are we working on? Our goals for the near term and midterm, long term. We're trying to encourage participation in our insurance programs to assist beekeepers in reestablishing their business. That's going to take a little bit of work. Our insurance programs are very expensive and the deductibles are too high. So beekeepers, especially the commercial ones, are shying away from the insurance program. I think it's important to get a better program. We don't want to go to the province all the time, cap in hand, asking for help. In the midterm, we need to get a better handle as to why we're losing these bees. Get to the bottom of what's happening. What happened last year to get to that's caused these high losses. We need more research, more work with our beekeepers to find out what went right, what went wrong, and mitigate and change that those losses. Next is encouraging the creation of local early season queens, nukes, packages, and brood business, and to diversify Ontario stock. One of those things is overwintering queens and nukes and getting our bees to overwinter in better condition. Basically, is to have our own program, our own sustainable Ontario beekeeping industry, and of course, we need solutions on other bee health issues. We're hitting this year on mites, possibly pesticides, but there are other health issues going on as well that we don't really understand. So we need research into all these issues that are contributing to the losses. Right now, we have available CAP funding to purchase domestic and documented disease-free honeybee stocks. So if you're interested in using CAP funding, there's still money available. We have the website available there. And again, for CAP funding, the purchase of equipment necessary to improve hive health. We have a number, most of you heard there last week, we have research going on in indoor overwintering, replacement of old brood comb with new disease-free comb, pest monitoring, purchasing equipment, diagnostic kits, varroa mite shakers, or a microscope. It's very important to test, and we're going to encourage all beekeepers this year to test and monitor for varroa and other diseases. There's also funding available for honey extraction equipment to improve the timing of extraction and the storage of your honey supers. One of the things that came up this year with talking to beekeepers is that, sometimes the equipment is a little antiquated. A lot of time is spent in the honey house working on extraction or working with their honey when they should be out treating for varroa mites or other diseases. Timing with varroa is critical. And again, laboratory testing for other diseases such as nosema. So what's the OBA been doing? We've been meeting with OMAFRA. This past winter, we've met several times with the Animal Health and Welfare branch, especially the apiary part of OMAFRA, to give them a heads up with the high losses we were facing. So they weren't surprised when we came to them. Today, we met with the Minister of Agriculture, Lisa Thompson. We had a great meeting with her. She's very interested in what's happening out there. I guess the unfortunate part is Ontario is going into an election year, and that's probably 2 weeks away before anything, when things stop. OMAFRA has said they'd look into what we need, and we will continue to work with OMAFRA and other agencies to help Ontario rebuild and recover from this. I don't want to be doom and gloom. I say that we have hope, and I want to keep that at the forefront of your minds, that there is hope here, that we can. We've seen this before, maybe not as bad, maybe not as widespread, but I think we can rebuild this with help and cooperation from our from ministry and other partners in this. So as far as the OBA and your board, we are the voice for Ontario's beekeepers. We will continue to advocate for beekeepers in Ontario with the provincial government, the feds, through your representation on the Canadian Honey Council. So we're asking you to bring your concerns to us, your board, and our administration. We'll go to bat for you. I don't think it's very helpful going around us. OMAFRA is listening to us. We've had some good relations with them. And I think if we bring some good, viable proposals to them, we'll get some assistance. But we're going to need you, the membership, to help us out here again. Address your concerns and your ideas to us so we can incorporate them into our plans. That's very important, to have a good plan going forward, and we need your help and communication with you, the members. Again, education is a critical part of what we're going to do, especially new beekeepers. Learn everything you can about keeping bees healthy. We have good programs. I know there's lots of stuff out on the internet and YouTube and wherever you can. Not all of that is good, and not all of that is Ontario related. For the commercial beekeepers, I know a lot of us have been in this for a long time, and sometimes we think we know what we're doing. And it's very important for some of the commercial beekeepers to make sure that their labor force is well trained too. So if you're a commercial beekeeper listening to this, think about getting some of your key staff trained on these. We have a couple dates up there for some training programs coming up: Chatsworth, Guelph, Merlin, Eganville, Port Hope through spring and summer. If you're able to sign up for those courses, it's very important.